we did our replication study on increasing physical activity through self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback. The participants included Lauren Holloway, Jensen Hoover, Courtney Kless, Kathryn Moore, and Max Willis.
The original study that we chose to replicate is called Increasing Physical Activity Through Self-Monitoring, Goal Setting, and Feedback. The article was written by Matthew Normand. Below you will see the reference if you are interested in looking at the article for yourself. In the following slides, we will discuss what the procedures were in the original study, how we tried to replicate the procedures, discuss our own results, and also discuss the limitations that we found while replicating the study. We chose to replicate this study because we were all interested in increasing our physical activity. However, we didn't all have the time to commit to going to the gym or doing something more rigorous and adding something else to our already crazy schedules. We acknowledged that we all live very busy lives, going to grad school, having a job, some of us have kids or families, that kind of thing. But we also understand that physical activity is an important aspect to ensure that we remain healthy. We can do the best at everything that we do and live a long and happy life. The purpose of our replication study was to evaluate the effectiveness of a convenient and inconspicuous intervention package composed of self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback measures to increase physical activity in adults using a pedometer with 7-day memory capabilities. The different aspects of the intervention package will be further discussed in this presentation. The original study's purpose chose to also include changing the weight of the participants. They measured the starting weight and then the weight throughout the phases. However, there was no change in weight, so the original study did not even report on any weights from any of the participants. For this reason, we chose not to collect any data regarding participants' weights and just chose to focus on increasing the number of steps taken using the pedometer.
The Normand study was a package intervention consisting of self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback to increase physical activity in healthy adults. The design used was a multiple baseline design across participants with a reversal design. The participants included 4 adults, 3 males and 1 female, recruited via flyer posted in the community or word of mouth. All participants were healthy, non-obese adults who reported that they exercised regularly or semi-regularly, but wanted to increase their daily activity levels. Mark was a 59-year-old male, Lana was a 55-year-old female, Alex was a 39-year-old male, and Chad was a 47-year-old male. Due to job-related relocation, Alex withdrew from the study after 50 days, but was able to complete 31 days of the intervention before doing so. Pedometers were used to record the number of steps taken daily. A step was operationally defined as any activity that resulted in a count being recorded and displayed on the pedometer. Body weight, as measured in pounds, also was recorded for each participant prior to the intervention, twice during the intervention, and at the conclusion of the study. However, weight did not change for any of the participants during the course of the study, so those data were not reported. Reliability checks for participant-reported step totals were conducted each week by the experimenter, using the 7-day memory feature on the pedometer. The experimenter checked each of the daily totals of the week and compared these totals with participant self-reports for the previous week. Pedometers were masked by tape to ensure that participants did not receive any formal feedback. Once per week, the experimenter met with each participant individually and recorded their daily totals using the pedometer's 7-day memory feature. There was also a return to baseline that was arranged for 3 of the 4 participants, but was kept brief to minimize the likelihood of reversing any health improvements that might have occurred. During the goal setting, self-monitoring, and feedback phase, daily step goals were established by calculating the average number of steps taken per day during the previous week and setting the new goal at that daily average if the participants met their goal from the previous week. If the participant did not meet their goal from the previous week, then the goal would not increase. Participants wore their pedometers unmasked and emailed their daily steps to the experimenter. If the participants met their goal, the experimenter would give the participants praise for goal attainment. If the participant did not meet their goal, the experimenter would encourage continued efforts. Feedback was done via email for this part of the intervention. Verbal feedback was also included by the experimenter and included feedback on the direction of data points, providing praise for increased physical activity that week, and providing encouragement to increase the physical activity of the next week. Graphic feedback showed the participants' performance data and included goal lines for the new step goal. A social validity survey was used to assess whether the participants believed the self-monitoring, feedback, and weekly meetings were useful components of the intervention and to gauge their overall satisfaction with the study. This was designed using a scale system where 0 meant the participants disagreed and 4 meant that the participants agreed. The daily step totals for each participant increased following introduction of the self-monitoring and feedback phase, decreased when the intervention was removed, and increased again when the intervention was reintroduced. Mark, Lana, and Chad all marked 4s on the social validity survey, meaning they believed that the intervention helped them increase their daily activity levels. Alex marked a 3 on the survey for each statement, which still indicated agreement. One of the resources of the original study was Van Warmer 2004 Pedometers and Brief E-Counseling, Increasing Physical Activity for Overweight Adults. This included 3 overweight adults, Jennifer, Heather, and Brad, that were self-referred by phone to the experimenter for information. Participants were emailed a series of instructions regarding pedometer usage, setting up a basic Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and graph, and a contact number to call with questions. Study phases included baseline, self-monitoring plus e-counseling, and follow-up. During baseline, participants wore their pedometers blinded to prevent activity feedback. Participants removed the sticker at the end of each week and divided their step totals by 5 to record a daily average for that week. During self-monitoring, participants wore their pedometers unsealed and recorded daily step totals each night on the spreadsheet. The self-monitoring plus e-counseling phase added a basic counseling component that included one scheduled email conversation per week with the experimenter. The results showed that Jennifer and Heather were able to maintain high levels of activity at follow-up, whereas Brad regressed towards baseline. Baseline phases clearly yielded the fewest steps for all participants, indicating a functional relationship between self-monitoring and physical activity. During e-counseling phases, only Jennifer clearly improved at a rate greater than self-monitoring alone. This study shows a functional relationship between the baseline and intervention phases. Unfortunately, both the Norman study and our replicated study did not show a functional relationship.
Hi, my name is Courtney Kless, and I will be discussing replication methods along with data collection and design and baseline phase. The participants in this replication study were myself, Max, Lauren, Kathryn, and Jensen. Our age range was from 22 to 29 years old, with our average age being 25 and a half years old. While the original study conducted looked at weight of all the participants, we decided to not use weight just because of personal reasons. The setting that our replication took place in was throughout our daily activities. We continued all of our daily activities as necessary, which included going to work, running errands, going to the gym, being with family. Nothing changed during our setting. Our methods included using a permanent product recording with the help of a pedometer device. We all used our own pedometer devices that we previously owned, and our devices calculated the number of steps that we took each day during our baseline and intervention phases. We used that to compare results, and we also used our devices to find averages. Most of our pedometer devices come with an application for a phone, and that was how we took all of our data. The application actually tracks 7-day progress, so we were able to use that during our baseline and intervention phases. For replication, each participant utilized a pedometer device to track their steps. 3 people used a Fitbit device, 1 person used an Apple Watch, and 1 person used a Samsung Gear Fit 2. All devices were worn on the wrist of the participants, and further on in this presentation, the variability of these devices will be discussed as one of our limitations. Ideally, we would have liked every participant to utilize the exact same pedometer device for consistency. However, the devices that we use, we had already previously purchased and owned, and that is what we decided to use. Frequency data was collected for the number of steps per day per participant. Our definition of a step is from our original study. A step is defined as any activity that results in a step being recorded on a pedometer device. Unfortunately, we do not know what a pedometer device is trained to collect as data for a step. Therefore, our definition is somewhat vague, yet does accurately describe what is occurring on a pedometer device for every step tracked. Our design was an AB replication reversal design, and it also used a multiple baseline across individuals. Therefore, we conducted a baseline 1, intervention 1, baseline 2, intervention 2, replication, but also used multiple baseline across each participant. Therefore, there are individual graphs and a whole group graph that will be displayed further along in this presentation.
For the baseline phase, participants all started collecting data on day 1 from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. and repeated until the end of day 5. All participants had tape placed over their devices and did not review their data until after 6 p.m. on the final day of baseline. For baseline, we overlooked the idea of participants starting the intervention phase after reaching stability. Therefore, each participant started the intervention at the same time. There is no staggering in the graph for the baseline phase 1 or 2. For the treatment phase, averages of each participant were taken from baseline data and used to establish individual goals for each participant in the treatment phase. All of the participants wore their devices uncovered so that they may review their steps throughout the day. Step data was reported to all participants using the application GroupMe for feedback using praise or encouragement. This occurred after 6 p.m. at the end of each day during the treatment phase. The feedback usually took form of great job or try again tomorrow. All participants provided screenshots of their step count and provided them to a designated participant for graphing.
As you can see, as we discussed in our previous slide, during our treatment phases, each night after 6 o'clock, we would all talk together and encourage each other. We would ask each other if we beat our goals, and then we would use positive reinforcement to encourage the person to either continue on the great path that they were on or to increase their steps the next day. Truly, our group came together every night during treatment phases to encourage one another. I honestly looked forward to this part of it. I was excited for my group members to encourage me to do better and great things the next day. As you can see, our conversations were in depth, and each of us contributed to the conversation.
When using a permanent product, such as a pedometer like we did in this study, it is not always necessary or even possible to calculate IOA. For example, typically inter-observer agreement is calculated by using the agreements divided by the agreements plus disagreements. However, because we used permanent product and just used screenshots of our pedometers and the number of steps taken, it's not really possible to have an incorrect reporting of number of steps because you're just taking the number that was used on the pedometer and recording that, in our case, into a Excel spreadsheet to report and to graph that. However, for the requirements of this project, we still calculated IOA. We did so through the use of screenshots. Each participant sent their screenshots showing the number of steps taken each day reported by the pedometer via a picture to a designated group member, who then compared that number that was reported by the pedometer to the number that the participant recorded in their data collection. If the numbers matched, this was counted as an agreement. If the numbers did not match, this was counted as a disagreement. IOA was collected on 8 out of the 15 days so far. For each participant, IOA was calculated at 100%. So that means out of the 8 days, there were 8 agreements, so that was the top number, divided by the agreements plus disagreements, which was also 8 because we had 8 agreements and 0 disagreements, and multiplied that by 100%. 100% IOA means that the number of steps reported by the pedometer exactly matched the number of steps recorded by each participant on each day that IOA was collected. Treatment fidelity ensures that the intervention is being implemented as it is intended to be implemented. Our group chose to use a fidelity checklist to ensure the intervention was correctly implemented due to the fact that we could not physically observe each other to ensure the consistency and accuracy of intervention implementation. Each member filled out the checklist acknowledging whether or not they followed the steps that we agreed upon, including placing black tape during baseline, putting the pedometer on and taking it off at the correct designated times, taking screenshots of the pedometer, providing data to the group, creating goals, checking in with other group members, and providing feedback, etc. Treatment fidelity is calculated by dividing the number of steps of the procedure that were completed correctly, dividing that by the total number of steps in the intervention. It was determined that all participants followed the intervention with 100% fidelity. This means that all participants correctly completed each step of the intervention with accuracy.
On this slide, we have my results from the study, beginning with our first phase, which was the first week of baseline 1. During this week, I averaged 5,748 steps. And in the second phase, which is week 2 of goal setting, self-monitoring, and feedback, I averaged 6,586 steps. And then in our third week of the study, baseline 2, I averaged 6,542 steps.
My data thus far consisted of an average of 5,816 during the initial baseline phase, an average of 6,196 during the first intervention phase, and an average of 7,391 during the second baseline phase. The graph displayed demonstrates to date that the data is not displaying a functional relation.
As you can see, my results were highly variable through the baseline, intervention, and baseline 2 phases. Baseline 1 had a range of 1,442 steps to 9,097 steps, with an average of 6,139 steps. Intervention had a range of 3,890 steps to 10,407 steps, with an average of 7,593 steps. Baseline 2 had a range of 1,336 steps to 14,189 steps, with an average of 7,569 steps.
So looking at my data, looking at baseline 1, it appears stable. Session 3, I had a pretty high level of steps, 9,300 steps there, with a decline towards the end of the week, and then going into the treatment phase or intervention, it appears I had a climb there for the first 2 sessions, and then I had a steady decline going towards the end of the week. And I believe this is due to just other variables such as the amount of work I had on the computer at my job, or the coursework that I had to work on the computer for school. So, and then going back to baseline, it's a little less stable, I believe. You see session 11 to session 12 to 13, it's kind of jumping around a little bit, and then a steady decline going to the end of the week. So from baseline, I actually had set my goal to 5,000 steps, and I did actually maintain that average going from baseline to the treatment phase, but still there is no functional relationship there.
Shown here is the data that I have collected for the last 15 days regarding the number of steps I've taken each day. Looking at the data, it is clear that the number of steps taken each day has remained pretty stable for myself. The average number of steps I took each day during baseline 1 was 7,799. Intervention 2 showed an average just 1 step below that at 7,798. Baseline 2 resulted in the highest number of average steps per day so far, at 8,132. My data shows that there was no functional relationship between the intervention and number of steps taken.
So looking at the multiple baseline design across all participants, myself, Kathryn, Lauren, Courtney, and Jensen, you can see that there is really no functional relationship for any of the participants. Additionally, as I discussed before, we overlooked the concept of waiting for stability during the baseline phase and then going into intervention phase. We didn't stagger the phase change, and that is why you see a straight phase line going through all participants. We're going to take that as a learning experience, and we'll apply this learning experience to our future coursework, and additionally to our profession as we hope to take the exam and become board certified behavior analysts. Also, you may notice that there is not a second intervention phase. We haven't started that yet. We will begin that second intervention phase on June 25th. And that'll be another intervention Monday through Friday, starting at 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. Just looking at the data, as I said before, there's no functional relationship. And when I look at my data, I feel that my work schedule and my coursework load had more impact on the amount of steps that I had. So I guess a confounding variable would be, workload for me personally. My job may have me going around on my feet more, but if I had office time or if I had time where I was, working on school, on my classes, I would be on the computer for hours at a time. So there were, no steps being made during that time. So then that may be the case for some of the other participants, confounding variables that had more impact than the intervention did.
From the graphs and visuals shown previously, we have demonstrated that there is no clear functional relationship between the independent variables of self-monitoring, goal setting, and positive feedback on the dependent variable of steps taken. In fact, for the participants in this study, the steps either increased each week or even remained the same. We proposed a few ideas on why this might have been. First, there are several confounding variables within the study that the participants thought made it difficult to reach their goals they had set. We found it difficult to sort of take away the consciousness of how many steps you're taking, regardless of whether or not the device was covered or not covered. Also, in this line of work especially, our schedules change frequently and can vary in the kind of activities you're doing day to day. For instance, some days require more desk work and paperwork, and other days you may be more active with your clients. We also found that activities that we had to do outside of our jobs, such as additional schoolwork or any other activities, changed our schedules and varied how many steps we were able to get in per day. In this study, we felt that there were several limitations that may have negatively affected our study. First, although we planned on designing the study as a multiple baseline across participants, we were unable to have a staggered start of the intervention and second baseline. We did not stagger these purposely because we felt that our behavior was variable in nature, and we felt that we had a limited time to complete each phase because of the condensed summer course and because of when this presentation specifically was due. However, we do plan to continue collecting data for next week for phase 4, which would be to reintroduce the intervention to gather more data and gather more results as well. Second, we felt that our work schedule and the varying hours that we work with clients and at the desk affected our steps. Sometimes our job can consist of long hours working on treatment plans or entering notes and those kinds of activities as opposed to being up and active with our clients. Next, we were unable to have inter-observer agreement because there weren't two observers to determine correct and incorrect steps because we used technology instead. However, we were able to use screenshots and a checklist to determine treatment fidelity. Lastly, because we use different methods of tracking our steps, such as an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, or a Samsung Watch, we felt that our data may be collected differently, as well as we use different apps to collect the data. We also felt that because this was an online class, that made collaboration and discussing data and design a little bit more difficult than we had planned. However, we felt that we were still able to collaborate pretty effectively and work together to complete our replication study. From our study, we felt that it's important to highlight the use of technology in future research because it is so important and so modern. However, using the same forms of technology might be more successful for future studies of this kind, such as using the same pedometer, using the same watch, using the same app, those kinds of things. We also recommend using a different design or methodology that can truly withdraw the intervention, because once you start being able to look at your watch and you're more conscious of the steps that you take, it is difficult to remove that sort of consciousness of the steps that you're taking in order to return to baseline. However, following our second introduction of the intervention, we will be able to more assess how that works. In the original study, there were older adults used, so we would like to recommend that future research of this kind consider age in the study, and that might lead to more consistent or more of a functional relationship in future results.
Thank you to everyone that watched this presentation. We learned a lot about conducting studies, collaborating with colleagues, and how to interpret different things while critically reviewing articles. We also, unfortunately, learned that this particular intervention did not really work for any of us, so we'll be on the lookout for more things that will help increase our physical activity. We hope that you all enjoyed our presentation and wish everyone the best of luck in the remainder of the semester.